Your family are dead, you hear me?
For all I know, they're dead already.
Jack!
Put the money back or I'll put a bullet through her head.
Coming into a picture that's already has been started and then stopped, and the dynamic was difficult, and the script was, we weren't quite happy with it, were we? And you had some, lots of ideas.
Well, we weren't all happy with it at any one time. Some of us were happy enough to start shooting,
Yeah,
and
it's
then
true.
we found out the studio wasn't so happy with what we had wrought, and we overcame that resistance, and then started shooting.
Well,
I think the main issue was articulating the plot and the mechanism by which the money was to be stolen. And there were a lot of options. We had to find an option that not only made relative sense to people in the banking community and had the smack of truth to it, but it had to be observable.
Sure.
It had to be visually interesting. And Richard came up with the idea of cobbling together a scanner tube and an iPod and various other things that were laying around the character's house in order to accomplish what needed to be accomplished.
You didn't like too much bits and pieces, did you? Was it Mr. McGovern, you called it?
MacGyver.
MacGyver.
MacGyver is a very popular series, television series. What I didn't want to do was to have it get to be too complicated for the audience to understand. And
You were right. It was the right balance.
whatever balance we obtained was out of a to the death struggle between us, which is probably not a bad thing if the film turns out all right and nobody dies.
No, that's
so
true.
Nobody died, and the film turned out okay, so it was probably worth going through all of that nonsense.
Yeah, it was. All today we've been doing press today, and there's been the questions. They say, so what is it like working with Harrison Ford? Is he? And I always say you're demanding in terms of you won't do anything unless you know why you're doing it.
I think the reason I don't do it if I don't believe in it is because then I can't make the audience believe in it.
Absolutely not.
And it really comes down to
that's why. Sorry.
making each moment work.
Yeah, to act well, you've got to believe in what you're saying and the dialogue and everything else.
Well, don't you have to obtain the same belief to direct a film?
Oh, yeah.
To know where to put the camera and how long to take with something and what tempo and energy should be obtained.
I guess so.
And how the character should define, particularly attend to the intention of the scene.
I never think about it.
Oh, shit.
It's so much. It's I don't really. I suppose it's the doing. You just got to turn up in the morning, and you've got to do so much stuff.
I'm reading a book called Blink, which is about the battle between the conscious and unconscious mind, and how the real critical information that we use to chart our path through life is that supplied by the subconscious in instinctive snap judgments. But these visceral choices are pretty instinctive.
And someone asked me today about what scenes you like best in the movie. Which ones did you like best? Which of the films? Never forget whether you're in them or not.
Clearly, one of the most important scenes is the moment of the home invasion, because it begins the beat of the drum that sustains the rest of the film.
Baby, I'm so sorry to make you. Oh! Call 911!
One of the acting problems of this film, and the thing we constantly referenced, was how do you keep in a character a degree of tension sufficient to acknowledge the reality of the situation he and his family are in, and for the length of time that it takes to finish the story and make it varied and interested.
It was hard enough to do it with your character, but what really bothered me and worried me, I think by sleight of hand you don't think about it in the movie when you watch it, but it's the children. How does an 8-year-old child behave and a 13-year-old child behave when they're kidnapped, when they've seen their father beaten up? We do some frightening gear shifts with that child's personality.
I think the truth about children is they can't sustain the tension. They can blank out reality in a way that we cannot. The other thing that's a balancing act in this film is to try and avoid the child in danger syndrome, where the people that are watching it feel that they have been manipulated because you've done something so horrible to a child, and they naturally react to it, but they hold you responsible for putting them in the position of having to observe it.
Absolutely.
So there's got to be a good story reason to go there. I think the character that Virginia played was very important because she gave comfort to those children, and her reaction to the situation was very important to how they behaved.
Come on. Are you all right? Okay, you're okay. Don't you ever touch my children again, do you hear me?
One of the more interesting situations was the fight scene at the end of the movie. We'd never been able to write it down because we didn't have a set.
No.
And we didn't have a set because we hadn't figured out the fight.
Chicken and egg.
We had neither a chicken nor an egg.
No.
But I had an idea of what I thought would make a good fight, and we all talked about it, and so we built a set to accommodate the action. We put a second floor on it so that we had a way of getting from one place to another. We could use a stairfall, and we didn't do an ordinary stairfall. We left off one side of the railing so that you could go off the edge, and I had them put the sill at the right height for my hip so that I could hinge over it. But at the same time, we're doing all this work, and back at the studio, they're saying, "Where's the fight scene? What's going to happen at the end?" And we said, "Well, you know, we're working on it." And next thing we know, there are two people from the studio who've come up to have us describe to them the fight scene. They were quite concerned. Quite concerned.
But you
very,
put them
very,
at their ease, didn't you?
I didn't put them at their ease. I scared the shit out of them.
Exactly, you did. But the one time I did shut up a bit was the fight scene, because I wasn't going to tell you how to do a fight scene. And it was, just a minute, it was, you really did, no, you did create that fight scene, and it was great to watch you doing it. Is that how a fight scene's normally worked out, the way we did it?
You know, if you'd done a lot of action stuff, you and I would have been, you know, working out of the same kit bag. We would have had the same experience, and we would have participated in it. You certainly controlled the parameters of where we went, and happily, we were on the same page I think. I felt we were on the same page all the way through the movie. It didn't, you know, we might have only got there the day before. But
was
when
the page
we
that was
came,
only written?
when we, the ink was still fresh on the page.
It was.
We did get on the same page when we did stuff. So I developed confidence in you. You developed confidence in me.
But why is it? I mean, everybody really finds that fight exciting. And if you analyze it, it's relatively simple, but it just seems to have it has a reality to it? Is it that it's...
I think because it's crunchy, it hurts.
Yeah, that's what people say.
You can feel the hurt, and that's what I mean, it's become so, I've said it so often, it really is tedious, but you can't get that from the back of a stuntman's head. No. You've got to be on the eyes of the character in order to feel his exhaustion, his pain, his triumph, his fear, all of that. And it's what keeps the audience sealed in. So much of what passes for action now is kinetics. There's no geography, there's no character involved. It's just this flash of kinetic energy.
Don't you think that the use of CGI in, not moving you away from it, but the same story really, CGI in terms of action, explosions and car crashes has actually taken away a lot from the excitement of filmmaking?
I think that's so true. I mean, because what we lose when we do that is human scale.
Yeah, you do.
That's what I think is good about this fight, is that you have no chance to get out of it. No. That it is human scale.
You've always done most of your stunts.
I don't do. I mean, you're like some.
Don't you start with me?
Damn reporter. Yeah, I don't do stunts.
Well, you did a lot in that. You did half that stair fall yourself.
High falls, fire gags, car rolls. That's stunt work.
Yeah.
What I do is physical acting, and I know how you can break it down into manageable pieces and put and you know where the camera needs to go for it, and blah blah blah. It's not a stunt.
Okay.
It's physical acting.
But the physical action.
There's one stunt in the fight, and that is where the guy is straight-armed over the porch railing. The character I play is over the porch railing to the bottom of the trench.
And then it's you again.
And I knew that was going to hurt.
Yeah.
The stunt guy knew.
That's why you don't direct, isn't it? Because you know it hurts.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I knew the stunt guy knew it was going to hurt, and in fact, it did hurt.
Yeah.
So happily, we got it in one shot.
There's something that you did in the film which I was really pleased with. I think you were as well. Was where we reshot a scene where you, having seen, I think that we'd seen the movie put together, and you could see the development of your character, and you decided to go back and redo a scene in the car where you're close to tears, where you're almost in tears when you're calling Harry on the phone. And I think that was a really right and brave decision to do on your part, because it gave so. As a member of the audience, I suddenly felt much more empathy for that man.
Well, what we'd always looked for was a place to register the effect of this character's experience, to the extent that he was brought to a place where he was almost broken down. And we thought about it and thought about it. We tried to put it in. We once had the intention to have him drive away from the house, having killed the bad guy, and stop on the side of the road and lose it.
Yeah.
Which would have been reasonable. But I think we hit upon a far better idea, which is to have it upside him, and he didn't know it was coming.
Yeah. I think, again, for me, that's what makes this film special in your character, is that he isn't Superman. He's an ordinary man who's just doing what he can to save his family.
Almost every film I work on these days, there's a bit of a reshoot.
Yeah.
I don't know why it is.
Well, there should be, truthfully.
So one of the reshoots that we did, the story had always, and it was a major miscalculation that we made. I don't know how we got so dumb. We let Mary Lynn drive the car.
Oh, yeah.
We let her drive the car.
Yeah.
And when this guy is trying to find his family, he can't be sitting next to somebody else who's driving the car. But we shot the whole thing oblivious to it. What in God's name we were thinking? But when we went back and determined that we had very few scenes that we actually had to shoot in order to get Jack driving, what a difference!
Much better. I'll tell you a story here, because the movie's out now and the DVD's out now. But you don't know this yet. No one knows it. But one of the scenes, she's still driving the damn car. But there's nothing we can do about it.
It's a long shot.
Hey? No, it's a wide shot, but she's still driving the car. When they go across the railway crossing, she's driving the car. And we only noticed about an hour before we locked the picture. I didn't want to tell anybody because there's no way we could reshoot it. So for the DVD spotters, she's still driving the car in one shot. No one notices. I think we decided very early on that we wanted the technology to be real, and that we both disliked enormously movies where suddenly you cut to computer screens and they look like something from Star Trek in what has been, up to that point, an ordinary real office building in New York. And I think people do get carried away with graphics, so we would deliberately had boring graphics. Having decided to make that real, then one got very frightened it would be really boring. But it wasn't,
except
really.
that we observed the cardinal rule. Something other than a computer had to be happening, and that's on the face of the character.
The technology was real. I mean, you could actually rob a bank doing the things that we did. They would all work.
But what really worked, and it's come to me to understand this, not when we were making the film, but now, that the real reason it worked was because they were behind the firewall.
Right.
They were not trying to get into the bank through the firewall or through my system of protection. I took them behind the firewall. And that's where all bets are off. They can do any, you can manipulate the system really easily. But I don't think the interest, what appeals to an audience is not the technology, not the bits, not the wit of it, but the emotional story that sustains them throughout the film.
It's always the characters. I mean, that's the first thing I look for when I'm looking for a script. Is what can the actors do? Because you don't walk out of a movie because it's badly photographed or badly costumed. You walk out of it because it's badly acted and uninteresting. And so if you can get the
or badly directed.
Does that happen?
occasionally.
Really?
Yes.
Gracious.